Well, howdy YouTube, Unky Joe here, Unky Joe's Playhouse. Today we're going to talk about my server rack. Yet again, I know. My server rack is always in a constant state of flux, but for the 2020 calendar year, I think I've got my rack finally settled. Alright, so let's get the video started and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So if you've been watching this channel of mine for any length of time, you know what we've gone through with this server rack. It changes on a whim, on a moment's notice, because I love to tinker with new stuff and play around with things. And, you know, there's always, when I go to test software, you can always run it in a virtual machine, but some software it's better to run on hardware, on physical hardware, etc., and not to use the hypervisor interface. And over the past couple of years, it's taken me time to learn some of the nuances of the software that I like to play around with, and what works best under virtualization and what doesn't. So, bearing that in mind, I have come to a conclusion, I think, for the year of 2020 of how I want to keep my rack configured, what the purpose of each unit is going to be, etc. So, I've even made a Visio chart to show you. So let's go look at the Visio chart. Alright, so let's take a look at this mess I've created here. So as you know, we've got a couple of Dell servers, this one and this one. And we also have a IBM X3650 Model 3, and then we've got some other various machines here. So the Dell R710 is going to be ESXi-Dell 1. It's going to be running ESXi 6.7. Now this will be the hypervisor for my PBX, for Exponology, VMware vSphere, and any other needed VMs that need to be running 24/7. Also, this is now hosting the storage for home video, audio, photos, music, etc. So keep that in mind. The other Dell R710 is a spare hypervisor for ESXi. It's running lab and other VMs. It's Dell number 2. Then we have the jump over here to the Supermicro, which is that Supermicro 8X-SIL-F motherboard running an X3470 CPU. This one is going to be running Windows Server 2019. ESXi 6.7 will not run on this Supermicro with this CPU. It's simply not supported, but it will run Server 2019, and that's good because I like to have 2 of each hypervisor running so I can do migration and vMotion and all that stuff. So that's what that Supermicro is. So that'll serve as the Microsoft hypervisor. We're going to be running FreeNAS on that and some other lab-related VMs for research and migration testing. Then we have the IBM X3650 Model 3. I hardly ever use this machine. It's a good, capable machine. It's got dual Xeon processors in it, just like the Dell. Now this will be serving as our other Microsoft hypervisor. It'll be running Server 2019, and it'll be for running the lab and other test VMs and for research and migration testing. Now, the Synology DS918 Plus is called MCS NAS. It's Synology, and it serves as my main long-term storage for the MCS network, and it's also running MCS DC01, which is a domain controller running Windows Server 2019 for the MCS domain. I figured I don't typically like running virtual machines under Synology, and they're not real fast, because the Synology is just, let's face it, it's not real fast. It's got a low-end Intel processor on it, but that's perfect for a VM that just sits there and serves out Active Directory, DNS, and domain services. So that's why I'm running that on the Synology Plus. That Synology never gets shut off. Then the other unit we have in here is the Synology Workstation 1018 on loan to us from Sasha over in the UK. And this thing is full of SSD drives. Well, it's half full of SSD drives. So I've decided to make this serve as my network file system, iSCSI, fast SSD shared storage for VMware and Hyper-V virtual machines. Gives us a little bit of flexibility in changing things around. And then the other thing that's going to be shocking to most people is my local workstation, my Ryzen 5 3600, is going to be running, it is running right now, Blue Iris. It's also the hosting MB and Plex, and it's also my daily workstation for video editing and doing my YouTube videos and supporting my clients and all that stuff. And then, of course, we cannot forget Unraid Beast. And mind you, Unraid Beast is not a rack server per se. In fact, I've got a video coming out on what we've done with Unraid Beast and what changes I made to it. But suffice it to say, it's sitting on my workstation right now, which is where it will remain. But that's mainly for running Microsoft and Mac OS VMs, shared storage, and it's more or less a playground to play around with Unraid Beast. So as it sits now, my rack is going to be perfectly configured for both using Hyper-V as a hypervisor, running Microsoft Windows Server, playing around with that, running VMware, the latest and greatest version, VMware vSphere, so we can do some migration and vMotion, all that kind of stuff. And then I've got also shared storage, and I've got a great location that hosts all my video, my Blue Iris, my MB, my Plex, etc. And it all seems to run very smooth this way. All right, so we talked about Unraid, and I'm going to have a video on that. Jerry and I made a decision what would be the best place to store Unraid. As you know, Unraid at one point has been in the 4U rack. Unraid has been in the tall tower. We've also used the 4U as the home NAS, and I did a video on the home NAS. The home NAS is no more, and I'll talk briefly about why the home NAS is no more, because I had nothing but trouble with it, and it could have been my fault, it could have been whatever. I could never get MB to run stable. I mean, it would run, but it was constantly, I had videos hesitating, everything. And you know that home NAS was my old Ryzen rig here, so I don't know whether if we were having motherboard problems or CPU issues or RAM timing issues or whatever, but I could never get MB to do what I wanted it to do. So I just loaded MB on my workstation here. I might as well put it to work. And then I did some experimentation with Blue Iris and found out that while it was running fine under virtualization, some of the features, like the main interface for Blue Iris, the one that runs where you can modify the cameras and the motion detection, it was real clunky running it on a virtual machine. So I took a chance and I loaded it on my local workstation. And in fact, let me show you my task manager. I'll bring it up here. You can see that Blue Iris is actually running. There you go. There's Blue Iris. It's up and running. Let me minimize my show notes here. And you can see it's only taking up about 11% of my CPU performance. And, you know, there's my 6-core 12-thread Ryzen 3600. Now I'm also running MB on here. I'm also running Plex. Same reason. It just seems like I put MB and Plex on my machine here, which is, this machine is up and running 24 hours a day. It also has a 10 gig networking card in there. I've got a fiber link between it and the switch on the rack. And as you can see, I'm recording with OBS. I'm also recording with Blue Iris. I've got Plex and VMware. I've got Plex and MB on there, and they're running just fine. It's handling the load. It's been stable, and you know, that's why we have these powerful CPUs, is to use them. And I just kind of found out, I kind of figured out, I had that epiphany that I was just kind of overthinking my whole entire setup. You know, I've got a very powerful workstation here, so I might as well put it to another good use and kind of limit the kind of amount of power I use in my lab. So we got Blue Iris, MB, and Plex all running on my local workstation. Win-win. So the other unit that's been retired is Zeus, and that was the 2U unit that was running as my Active Directory domain controller, and I was running my business VMs on there. Now that domain controller, like I said, has been moved over to the Synology NAS. I've got a video coming up on some updates I did on the Synology in order to make that happen, so you'll get to see that. So I don't want to talk about it too much, but it's handling the load very well. That allowed me to take that Supermicro motherboard and put it into a 4U case. Now, if you saw my video on VMware, Did I underestimate or misjudge VMware? I don't even remember the title. Look, I have tried ESXi. I'm sorry, I've tried XCPNG. Love it. I'm a big fan of that hypervisor. I like Proxmox. It works well. They're both a little, well, the interface is a little clunky. Pass-through is a little clunky. They don't really have a great, for you command line guys, it's great, but for a GUI guy like me, it's just not a good fit. I have been playing around with ESXi for weeks now, and I've really got the hang of it. And I need ESXi in my lab because of some certain virtualization requirements that I just can't get. I can't replicate with Hyper-V. Namely, I want to be able to run Synology as a virtual machine. I can't do that under Hyper-V. I can't do it under XCPNG, and I can't do it under Proxmox. At least I'm too stupid to figure out how to do it. Xmonology now has gotten to the point where they actually have an OVA file. They can just import right into ESXi and pass your disk through, and you're up and running. And that's what I've done. I'm going to show you a video on that as well. So that's running on. That's why I'm needing VMware. Plus, I wanted to play with VMware. I've got that VMUG subscription. It's about $200 a year that I paid for, and you get 6. You get 6 CPU licenses, so you can have it on 3 or dual CPU machines, and then you get 2 licenses for the vSphere. And I like it. I'm really fond of it. It works well, and that's why I've loaded it on the Dells, because as we move forward in this adventure, I've got some stuff I want to do with ESXi. So the other thing I've done is I've got 2 machines running Hyper-V, Windows Server 2019, as you saw in the list, and it just allows me, those are the main hypervisors I use. Not that XCP and Proxmox are bad, but I just don't have any use for them in my lab. And if I do, I can always run them as a VM. So that's the whole idea, is to stop making changes to this rack, to get the rack to where I can do everything I need to do without having to physically change hardware around like I have in the past year or two. Now, one of the other things this allows me to do is my entire network gets to be able, as far as the servers are concerned, has now been converted to 10 gig. We started this 10 gigabyte journey a long time ago. I've taken my time, and through generous donations, Sasha, thank you again for the generous donation of that 10 gig switch. Couldn't have done it without you. And I have, I've got a mix of SFP plus, SFP copper connections, and SFP over fiber connections. We now have the infrastructure in place on all these servers to run 10 gig, and to get and frankly, for my lab environment, I want really fast storage for these virtual machines. I really don't care about long-term storage or file transfer, although I do like them to be up at 100 megabytes per second or gigabit speed. But I really like the faster speed for the VMs to boot. I don't like to have to put storage on the same node that I do my virtualization on. I prefer to use shared storage. Plus, it gives us the ability to play around with shared storage. And there are things you can do with shared storage you can't do with local direct attached storage. So another good reason for using ESXi and VMware and Hyper-V in my lab. It just makes for a better lab environment for me. Now, the other issue I struggled with using Proxmox and XCP and other hypervisors was transferring virtual machines between different hypervisors. If you've ever used VMware and Hyper-V, you'll know that it's trivial to convert from one machine type or one virtualization structure to another. But I digress. My point being that it's trivial to transfer a virtual machine from Hyper-V to VMware and vice versa. I can't say that with XCP or Proxmox. I never had any good luck moving the virtual machines between the two different systems. It doesn't mean it can't be done. It just means I don't know how to do it, and I frankly just don't have the time. Right now, I don't want to learn it. Now, in order to make this happen, I have delayed these upgrades for a long time, but I'm going to show you some video about some upgrades I did on the Dells in order to make this happen. I've put different CPUs and different RAM or upgraded the RAM in both of the Dells. I'm going to talk through it, but even if it picks up my voice. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is remove the RAM that's in here, but I want you all to get a better picture of how I'm doing this. So we'll remove the fan assembly and hand that to Jerry for now, if he'll go put it somewhere. And they sent me 16 8-gig sticks of DDR3, and that's what we're going to be putting into this Dell. And then once we verify the RAM is okay and test fine, then we're going to be replacing the CPUs as well. So, but for now, let's get the RAM out of here. And Jerry, if you'll get me an anti-static bag to put them into, that would be great. So I'm just loosening them all up, and these are 4 gig and 4 gig and another 4 gig. Yeah, it looks like all of these are 4 gig sticks, so we're going to go back in with 8 gig. So I'm hoping using a combination of this RAM and the RAM that's in the other server, we'll get 96 gigabytes, but we'll see. I do have some 8 gig DIMMs that are compatible with these Dells. Now these over here, yeah, these are 4 gig, 4 gig. Yeah, these are all 4 gig. These are Hynix RAM. Alright, I'll give these to Jerry. Alrighty, so. And these are 8 gig sticks. Yes, they are. Okay, so. Whites. Black, and then skip. White. Black. And then skip. There is a manual on how to install these DIMMs, because if you try to read the front cover of the top cover of the Dell, good luck figuring it out. Alright, the black one, and that's it for this channel. So now for the other CPU. Alright, so if we just start from the other side, it's white, black, skip, white, black, skip. Okay, so we skip one, then we go to the white one again. And then the black one. And the white one. there it is. RAM is installed. So now what we need to do is put the unit back together. Even though I'm going to replace the CPUs, I'm not going to do it right this minute. So we'll put the baffle back on. Put the cover back on, plug it in, let the I need the fan, Sherry, sorry. Alright, put the baffle back in so it gets the proper airflow. Slide our cover back on. And go ahead and slide that back into the rack. Now, while I'm here, slide the other Dell out as well. Oh boy. Hope these are 8 gig sticks. This is Dell 2. Set that somewhere, please. Let's see what kind of RAM we got in here. Good, these are 8 gig. So, there should be some more 8 gig sticks over on that desk in that package that I showed you earlier, the anti-static package. Let's hope there's 6 of them. I don't know. Probably only 4. I've only got 4. So, that'll be unbalanced memory, won't it? Okay, so what we're going to do is replace these 2 power-hungry CPUs that only have 4 cores with 2 CPUs that are more power efficient and have 6 cores. Total of 24 threads. So, we'll release that button there, we'll release this button here. And very carefully we're going to twist this to the side. We don't want to pull the processor out of the socket until it comes up. There we go. There's one heat sink. Same way with the other one. I put new thermal compound on these a few months ago, so it's nice and gooey. Alright. And then I'm not going to take the CPUs out until I get the replacement ones to put in there, because I don't want the little pins to get damaged. So let's knock these down for now. Jerry, if you will bring me the CPUs. So even though these processors are faster as far as clock speed go, I'm not really worried about clock speed, because most of my virtual machines don't need it. What they need is lots of cores, and I'd rather have it be power efficient than to be really fast. And we're talking a few hundred megahertz here of difference between them. So I asked for the processors in the anti-static bag is what I asked for.
I thought you said and.
No, anti-static bag. Jerry misunderstood me. God love him.
Comes from having a 10% hearing deficit.
What?
Huh?
Huh? There are many things wrong with him.
Yes.
Okay, so
My family is one of them.
we will put the new CPUs right here. Made in Costa Rica. Okay, so let's get the other CPUs out. And the triangle goes in this corner, facing the front. Okay. Oop, up it in. Yep, that appears to be right. And pull the lever down. Same way with this one. Paying attention where the arrow goes. And this arrow goes in this corner toward me. They make a tool, a little suction tool that drops these in, but I just try to be lucky. Alright, there we go. These CPUs can come out and go on eBay. And then if you will get me the on the shelf with the soldering iron, there's a tube of thermal compound. If you'll get that for me, thank y'all. So all I do is put a pea-sized portion of thermal compound on, because any more is wasted. Hand that back to my assistant. And then I'm not going to bother to clean these because the thermal compound was fairly new on them. Yeah, I can hear some of y'all at home right now going, why is he not cleaning the old compound? Mainly just to see how many of you get triggered that I'm not cleaning the old compound. Just kidding. Don't want to trigger anybody. Look, if the old compound was hard as a rock, then I'd be worried about it, but right now I'm not. Okay, CPUs are back in. Now then, Mr. Jerry, Mr. Assistant, if you'll get me the fans, por favor. Has to be just so. What?
I think Toby's honking.
Oh well. Put the air baffle back in. Here's the box cutter, Jay. Thank you. Yeah, hopefully I've done my job right. Now, I want to give a shout out to the guy who runs a YouTube channel, The Art of Server. Go look him up. I'll try to remember to put a link down in the comments section or down in the down below, so you know where to go. But The Art of Server. If you deal with Dells or you deal with SAS or serial ATA controllers, RAID controllers, that kind of thing, he's your man. I've purchased controllers from him, processors. He also has CPUs for sale for the Dells. Cannot say enough good things about him. But he's a really stand-up guy. His prices are good. He stands behind his products. I've also bought, I think, 2 of the LSI controllers from him, flashed into IT mode, so I can make all this happen. So again, a shout out to The Art of Server. He's the one I bought these 2 CPUs for. What I did on my Dell R710 is I had X5670s in there, I believe, and I went down to the L series processors because they use less power, but still gave me more cores than I had on that server before. So as you saw, I was able to get those new processors installed. Granted, it was a little touch and go there because I had to kind of drop the CPU in. Even though these things are rack mounted, the position where we've got the rack makes it kind of hard to work on them. So, and we had to finagle and fight cables and whatnot. So we were able to upgrade the first Dell to 96 gig of RAM, and then we were able to take the RAM out of there, combine it with some other RAM I had, and upgrade the second Dell to 64 gig of RAM. I did not change the processors out in that Dell 2 machine, the secondary Dell, but I did change the ones out in the upper Dell. If anybody knows of anybody selling a Dell R720 server at a good price, I don't need any hard drives in it. I prefer the 3.5-inch model, but I'm willing to get the 2.5-inch model. But I want a couple of good Xeon processors in there, and I want at least 64 gig of RAM in the thing. So if anybody comes across a good deal on one of those, let me know. I'm in the market for one. And the reason I'm looking at the Dell R720s rather than the 710s is they have the ability to put graphics card in those servers. So I've got some plans moving forward where I want to get my hands on a couple of those Dell R720s. or one of those Dell R720s, not two. I can't afford two. Now, this is a shout out to a subscriber, Brian. Brian won. We did a motherboard giveaway on a live stream a few weeks ago, and Brian won the motherboard. And frankly, I've just had so much going on here with, my mother and Thanksgiving and all that stuff. We tried to get up to the post office to get this motherboard mailed out to Brian, and unfortunately it didn't happen. And I want to apologize for not getting this out to you sooner, but I'm telling you right now, we will have it out to you next week. And again, apologies and thanks so much for your patience and for being a subscriber, and to all my other subscribers and Patreon subscribers and PayPal providers. I appreciate all of y'all's continued support on this channel, but especially to you, Brian, because you've been patient and waited so long for this motherboard. Well, there you go, YouTube. Hopefully, this is the last of the rack changes for a while until we get, some more equipment in there. Again, I want to replace that IBM 3650 with a Dell R720. I'm going to be looking for one, but you guys keep your eyes open for one if you find one at a good price. I don't want to pay more than about $300 including shipping for this thing. So please, if you also want to donate to that fund, do a PayPal or Patreon, and that's what we're going to be putting our PayPal, Patreon, and YouTube money toward, is to that new server, the R720, because although I like that IBM 3650, I just don't have a use for it. I have two Dells that are very similar to it, so maybe what we'll do is a giveaway on that IBM 3650 once we get the Dell in here, and give it to somebody who needs, who's worthy and needs a lab setup. But hopefully this will be it for the rack now, for hopefully the year 2020. I won't have to rejigger stuff around. I should have everything in place I need to virtualize things, to play around with it, and do some more great videos. So thanks again for coming to see us. Please don't forget to leave your comments down in the comment section. Give us a thumbs up if you like the video. Donate if you're so inclined. We take PayPal, we take Patreon. We've got the holiday season coming up, but it doesn't mean I slow down on videos. If anything, I make more of them. So, and we got a lot of videos coming up here. Thanks again, though, for coming to see us. Please don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell, and come back and see us again real soon. And don't forget, we'll see you on the other side.